Hi friends, in today's video I wanted to share 4 tailoring tips that were taught to me many years ago. I used them when making McCall's 2447, a man's vest. I made view C. So I wanted to share these 4 tips with you. So let's get started. Now each of these tips will be time-stamped in the description below. So if you would like to watch only one of these tips at a later date, you won't have to watch the whole video. So here's tip number 1. Normally, the pattern would instruct you to add the appropriate weight of interfacing to the fashion fabric or the outer shell of the garment. But as you can see, I have added the interfacing to my lining instead. Let me explain why. This vest needs interfacing to give it structure. You can think of the interfacing as being the bones or the skeleton to the garment. Without it, it would just lay there like a blouse or a shirt because this suiting fabric is thin. So interfacing has positive effects in all garments. But what can happen over time after this garment is worn and dry cleaned? The glue of the interfacing can become weak in areas, causing the interfacing to bubble. This isn't okay if you are going to expect to be able to wear this garment for years, which Jeremy is. So the solution is to add the interfacing to the lining instead of the fashion fabric. Over time, if the interfacing should bubble, it will only be seen from the inside, making this tip helpful in keeping your garment looking great for years to come. Now let's go on to tip number 2. Now when working with the front facing and the lining, I pinned them to each other, right sides together, clipped and pressed the seam allowances toward the lining. With the lining interfaced, it makes this much easier. You could stitch this down using a straight stitch, but why not take this opportunity to use one of the many decorative stitches that your machine offers? Now, I do suggest that you make a test sample to make sure that you are going to like this effect. As you can see, I kept the bobbin the same. So that way, all I had to do was change out the top thread in the machine. Also, I only used a little bit of the metallic thread. Here's tip number 3. In order to share this tip with you, I have to get inside the garment. This pattern instructs me to put right sides together, so all around, turning at the corners, and then clip them diagonally. Okay, the issue I have with this is clipping the fabric, because many of us will clip it too close to the seam line. Also, I want to stabilize this corner. If I cut away the fabric, it will become weak. Okay, let me explain what I do. After I sew the 2 pieces together and press the seam, I turn the corners at the seam line, making sure I have a sharp point. I put my thumb inside and hold the fabric point in place with my fingers. Turn the fabric and then I get a sharp point. I then take it to my ironing board and press it with a pressing cloth. I will either top stitch by hand or by machine, so the fabric is tacked down and will never move. And that point will always look great. Last but not least, tip number 4. Now, when we expect to wear a garment for years, it is best to plan ahead. This tip starts before we cut out all the pieces. As you can see here, the back lining piece has tailor's chalk marking the seam line, and there is no change to the back pieces. Where the change comes is in the front pieces. I've added an inch to the side seam only. Now the reason is, if I cut this with the 5/8 seam allowance as called for, if I needed to take this out, I could only take it out by 1/4 of an inch because I still need a seam allowance left. Now this would give me a leeway of only 1/2 an inch total. 1/4 of an inch on this side and 1/4 of an inch on that side. That's how we get the 1/2 inch total. With an additional inch on each side, that 1/2 an inch all of a sudden becomes 2.5 inches in leeway I have to take out this garment. Okay, now let me explain how and why with each step. This pattern, like most vest patterns, want us to stitch front to back at the sides, keeping the lining free. Then we press the seams open and then slip stitch the lining closed by hand. But if we put a crease in this fabric, over time it can get worn, or put that crease in the fabric's memory. Then when we wanted to take it out, there would be a worn out line here. I don't want to fold this at all. So what I do is I pin the back lining fabric at the seam line. And then I scoot the front inside all the way to the seam line. Then I whip stitch this closed by hand using tiny stitches. Then if I have to take it out, I will remove the whip stitches and move it out as much as I need and then close it up again. I would do the same if I have to take it in. By doing it this way, the fashion fabric will be nice for years to come. Now those are the 4 tips that have been taught to me, and I've been so happy to share them with you. I hope they help you in your sewing endeavors. If you found this video helpful and would like to buy me a cup of coffee, I've left my link in the description below also. Now these little tips and donations make it helpful for me to purchase fabric and notions, and yes, actual coffee, to keep going and bringing these videos to you. Please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, until next time, bye.